Hey guys, this is Haley from WildOnRabbits.com, and in today's video I am going to be filming the real reason why I will not be getting any more bunnies. So after Belle and Mocha died, I got a lot of questions on why don't you get any more bunnies? When are you getting more bunnies? And then obviously since Lulu passed away, I have been getting those questions again. I don't really understand why when someone's pet passes away, the first instinct is for someone to be like, when are you replacing them type of thing. Like, I just feel like that's a little bit weird. But I can also understand why someone who used to have 5 bunnies and now only has 2, I guess people might be curious, why that is. So I thought I would finally just make a video explaining it because in previous years, I've just kind of covered it up with, oh, I just don't really want any more. That's kind of true, but it's also kind of not. So I decided to make an entire video about it, even though I don't really want to. No, I'm just kidding. I want to make it. It's just, there's a lot of hard subjects that I'm going to be talking about. So prepare yourselves. All right, so back in 2017, you guys may remember if you've been around that long, I used to have 5 bunnies. I had Mocha, Lulu, Belle, Sterling, and Ebony. And at the time, I had 4 jobs. I worked 25 to 32 hours a week at a retail store. And then I also had another part-time job online. And then I had my YouTube and my Etsy. So that was around, like, when you added all the hours up per week, it was around 40 hours a week or more that I was working. I lived on my own, I had a roommate, and I had 5 bunnies because I could afford it. I wanted 5 bunnies, and that's just kind of where I was at that time of my life. So the summer of 2017 is kind of when it all happened. And summer of 2017, I started having a lot more physical symptoms. I was showing signs of my POTS before this time, but this is when it got really bad. So around the summer of 2017, I was blacking out, which is also known as pre-syncope, which is pre-fainting, I guess you could say. So I was losing my vision, blacking out at work 30 times a day, or 30 times a shift. And at the time, besides blacking out, I wasn't as sick as I am now, but that's kind of when it started. And then I was having a lot of memory issues and brain fatigue. So I would be driving home and I wouldn't know where I was going. So there was just a lot of strange symptoms happening. Around that same time, I was struggling a lot with my mental health. I don't think I've talked about my mental health probably at all on this YouTube channel. I have on my personal account, but I have a lot of mental health conditions, disabilities that I've had basically my entire life, but 2017 was probably the worst year. Well, one of the worst years. In the summer of 2017, my counselor at the time and also my psychiatrist at the time basically told me it would be a good idea to quit my retail job. And if you know anything about psychiatry or counseling, basically their job is not to tell you what to do. Their job is to guide you to make your own decisions. So for them to basically say, you should not be working right now, link it. So for them to say, basically, you should not be working, was kind of a big deal. I'm not gonna go into detail exactly what happened just because of my audience. I know you guys are fairly young. A lot of you guys are fairly young on here, but basically I was struggling a lot with depression. That was probably the most disabling thing at the time. I have really severe OCD. I was diagnosed with OCD since the age of 10. I've had it my entire life, but it got pretty bad around 2017, which I was about 19 years old, if you guys were wondering how old I was. So I was about 19, and I also have panic disorder, and because my OCD and my depression was so bad, I was having panic attacks, multiple times a week. So it was pretty severe at this point. So I ended up quitting my job. I no longer was working at my part-time job online either, so I just had my YouTube and my Etsy. So around August of 2017, I was admitted to a partial hospitalization program for anxiety and OCD. And this is something I never talked about publicly, like not even really on my personal channel. I have mentioned it recently on my Instagram, like just kind of talked about it, but at the time I kept it a complete secret to everyone just because it's really bad, but there is a stigma around getting help for mental health, which is not okay. That is why we have such high mental health problems in our country, probably the world as well. It's just a taboo topic that people don't like to talk about, and because of that, I felt like I had to be silent about what I was going through. My close friends knew that I was being hospitalized, obviously, and then my family, but other than that, I didn't talk about it online. If you watched my YouTube channel during that time, you wouldn't have known. But yeah, I kept it a secret from everyone, and I didn't really talk about it until a couple years after my hospitalization. But basically, I was hospitalized in August of 2017, and I was there for 8 weeks, which the standard is 4 to 6 weeks. So I was there a little bit longer than the standard. That program literally changed my life. Before I went there, I was completely disabled by my mental health, and afterwards, I was in a really good place, thankfully, all the way up until probably last year, like really mentally stable. I was still doing counseling, still taking my meds, all that stuff. Another thing that happened was my first viral video that I got on my YouTube channel was actually filmed. My parents were waiting in the car for me to take me to the hospital, and I needed to film a video. So I filmed it in 10 minutes, and then I jumped in the car and we left. And I was thinking at the time, oh, this is a dumb video. I'm rushing through it. It's not gonna be that good. And it ended up going viral, which was just kind of weird. No one knew what was happening behind the scenes. No one knew my mental state. No one knew anything like that. So it's just weird how, you know, you don't know what's happening behind YouTube, and Lincoln is trying to jump on the camera. Lincoln, you do not jump on cameras. YMCA. Okay. Anyways, so the year of 2017 was also the year that Belle and Mocha both passed away. They were both 8.5 years old when they passed. Belle passed away due to, we believe, uterine cancer. She was never spayed because I got her when she was already 8 years old, and you can't really spay a rabbit when they're 8 years old, especially a rabbit in her condition. She was not very well taken care of her entire life. She was extremely obese at one point in her life, and she had a lot of mobility issues. She was not a healthy bunny, and at 8 years old, the vet basically was like, it's too risky. Considering she wasn't spayed and she did live that long, that was a pretty long life for an unfixed rabbit. But sadly, one day she just didn't want to move. She was still eating and everything. We took her to the vet, and the emergency vet actually, because it was like over the weekend, and they did a couple tests and they found out she was bleeding internally, which obviously we don't know for sure it was uterine cancer. We didn't do anything invasive to test her because at that point, if you're bleeding internally, you don't want to like do surgery to like find out what the problem is. That's a horrible way for a rabbit to die. So that's what we believe happened, and because she was bleeding internally, the vet said she had, you know, a couple hours, maybe a day left, and so we did decide to put her down just because bleeding internally would be an awful way to die, and we felt like that was the most humane thing to do. A couple months later, Mocha passed away. We don't know for sure what Mocha died from, but if you followed along back then, he had a ton of medical conditions. He was deaf basically his entire life. He had chronic cornea ulcers, which basically meant his eyes were constantly feeling like they were being burned. He wore clear contacts to protect his eyes to help minimize the burning feeling. He was on pain medication daily. He was on medication to help with we believe he had possibly neurological issues going on. And we don't know exactly what he had, but he basically had every single test at the hospital and like the specialized vet. And basically they thought he had lymphoma cancer just because that wasn't something you can always find on tests. But he ended up living longer than they expected. They said once they found that out, they said with lymphoma, you know, they normally only have a couple weeks, but he ended up living several months after that. So again, we don't know if that's what it was. But he did end up just passing away in his sleep one night. So yeah, after that, I got a lot of people wondering, oh, why aren't you getting more bunnies? Why aren't you replacing them? Or like, you know, random things like that. And I understand why people are curious, but it kind of comes across really rude when you're in this position. But I also understand that a lot of the people asking are probably fairly young and probably don't realize everything that goes on behind the scenes. So in fall of 2017, I got diagnosed with a condition known as POTS. I talk a lot about it on my personal Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Basically, it's called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Basically meaning my autonomic nervous system doesn't work properly when I am upright, hence the postural part in the name. So basically what it causes to happen is when I'm upright or I stand up, it causes my heart rate to spike extremely high. And in order to compensate for that, the body like kind of goes into like fight or flight mode and causes me to pass out. I don't always like completely pass out, but I get pre-syncope a lot. Another thing that happens is I have low blood volume, which means I have less blood circulating my body than the average person. Because of that, when I stand up, because of my autonomic nervous system, my veins, or whatever you call it, in my lower legs, when a normal person stands up, they constrict. And that's how the blood gets pushed up to your heart to be circulated through your body. But someone with POTS, or with me specifically, when I stand up, my lower veins don't constrict because they aren't able to. So because of that, my blood falls to my feet, which causes my legs to turn purple, which is fun. And then because I have less blood already circulating my body, and then it falls all to my feet, that causes me to pass out, black out, and like have memory problems and stuff like that. So I have like a central line now, which it's not accessed right now, but normally a needle goes in this little bump thing. And I give myself IV fluids to increase my blood volume so I have more blood circulating my body. Anyways, I didn't get that until like last year, but anyways. My physical health went downhill pretty quickly. At that point, I wasn't able to clean the bunnies' areas myself. My dad was coming over to help me all the time, and in the winter of 2017, I decided to move back home with my parents. There were several reasons for this. The main reason was my roommate at the time had moved out, and I could no longer afford to live there myself. It was an entire house. I just could not afford it. But my parents were paying my rent, they were paying my utilities, and they were paying for my food because, as I mentioned before, I went from 4 jobs to basically 1 because at this point I was also too sick to continue on making or doing my Etsy shop. So I basically only had YouTube at that point, and newsflash, YouTube does not make much money. So I, at this point, was considered, for my area, severe poverty. I couldn't afford to live. So I had to move back home with my parents, and until probably 2020, I basically didn't have much money. My parents paid for almost everything. I was still paying for like my car insurance, my phone, and like, you know, things like that, but like I wasn't paying for a ton. I was still paying for my bunnies too, like that I always paid for. But at the time, people were like, well, why aren't you getting more bunnies? I don't understand, like, why don't you get more bunnies? And I couldn't even afford to feed myself, let alone another rabbit. And I never really talked about it because, like, you know, money is also another taboo subject that I don't really understand why it's taboo. I personally don't think it should be, but that's kind of just the culture you know, we were brought up in is you don't talk about money, you don't talk about how much you make, you don't talk about how much you spend, that type of thing. It wasn't until I opened my store in 2019 that I started making a little bit more income. I was able to buy a new car, which was great because I am a part-time wheelchair user due to my physical disability, and my wheelchair didn't fit in my tiny little car, so I was able to get an SUV, and the money I was making from my shop was able to pay for my car payment, which was really great. Then, you know, that was at actually the end of 2019, and then in 2020 I started making, you know, a little bit more money. At this point I was able to start paying for a lot more myself. I was able to pay for my groceries again. I was able to pay for, you know, just like things that I needed. That was just really nice to like start being independent again, to support yourself. Like that's something that every person in their 20s wants. So yeah, at this point I was 22-ish. I'm like trying to remember how old I was. And like, you know, I didn't make a ton of money, but instead of being in the severe poverty line, I was maybe considered poverty at this point. I'm actually probably still considered in the poverty line, but I don't feel like I am. Anyways, so yeah, I was actually making enough to, you know, pay my bills. You know, I mean, I still wasn't paying rent, I still wasn't paying utilities, but like I was still able to afford things, and that was really nice. At this point, could have I afforded another bunny? Yes. However, it wouldn't have been smart. It would have put me in a very financially tight situation. So also my whole physical disability thing was not getting better. It was in fact getting worse. That was around the time, you know, I was getting my central line and stuff like that. So that it's not smart to get a pet when you're in that situation. So yeah, that brings us to now. Can I afford another rabbit? Technically, maybe. Obviously, you guys know I did get another pet. I got Lincoln this summer. That was kind of out of necessity. Milo couldn't handle being alone. He was very depressed, very sad. So I did end up getting Lincoln, which getting another cat, you know, brings more medical bills, brings more medication, brings litter costs, food costs, things like that. So that did, you know, obviously I spent that on him. Another thing is my physical health is still extremely poor. My dad still helps me a lot. I had to hire a house cleaner to clean my home because I can't do it. I've also had, you know, like I said, my dad helps me a lot, especially with my business, the online shop. I have a couple employees as well who help me with my online shop, and then my dad does help me with the bunnies. He helps me with the cats sometimes, and I'm just not physically in a situation where getting another bunny is physically smart. The other thing that is hard for me to talk about is, so on Friday, I was placed again in a partial hospitalization program for OCD. My OCD has once again kind of relapsed, and this time I would say it's probably the worst that it has ever been. There's a lot of things that probably caused this relapse, I guess you could say. I'm not gonna get into that. That's not really what this video is about, but I am technically in another partial hospitalization program where I am attending, you know, therapy for 6 hours a day. That's my life right now. That's my reality. Is I struggle a lot with physical things, but also mental health. And, you know, I don't want to be quiet about it this time because, you know, last time I kept it a secret, and I felt like there was no benefit to keeping it a secret necessarily. And I think people in my position should be more open about mental health, just because, like, it's not shameful. It's not something that you should be ashamed of and be ashamed of getting help for, because getting help can change your life. I know that I will not be like this forever. I know I'm not going to be in this position forever, but right now I am. And because of that, I need help, and that's okay. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask for help or get help. And I feel really bad about that because it's life-changing, honestly, like it is. And for those of you guys who've been following me, you may know that I also am getting a service dog. He's currently being trained in Maryland, and he is 6 months old and so cute and so amazing and so smart. His name is Luca, and I do have a GoFundMe listed below if you guys are interested in donating towards his training costs. Training a service dog is really expensive, or having a service dog trained. Either one is very expensive. The average cost for a fully trained service dog is, I forgot what Google says, but it's like $25,000 to $40,000 for a fully trained service dog. Luca, thankfully, is not going to cost quite that much, but by July of this year, I need to have raised $15,000. So far, I've already paid for $750. I've paid for $750 of it, I believe. So I still need to raise, the rest of that $15,000. And a lot of you guys have been so sweet and so helpful and have, donated to my GoFundMe, which means so much to me. I don't have a ton of money, but I have been saving everything that I don't use on, myself and my pets towards Luca, his training, and his supplies. I wouldn't have gotten a service dog if I could not afford it, but I do appreciate any donations that people have made just because it is a huge financial thing in my life. But obviously, the reason I decided to get a service dog is to greatly benefit my disabilities. So he's mainly going to be for my POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, but he is also going to be for my mental health as well. He will help me with my Tourette syndrome, which technically isn't mental health, it's a neurological condition, but he'll help me with my Tourette syndrome, my POTS, and my mental health conditions. So like my OCD, my panic disorder, those two specifically, but other conditions as well. So yeah, he's amazing. I love him already, and I've met him once, but he was 7 weeks old. I haven't seen him since then, but I get video updates and picture updates, and it's so exciting. So anyways, yeah, that's a huge, financial cost that I am putting a lot of my money into right now, and it wouldn't be financially smart for me to take on another pet in addition to that. A dog, let alone a service dog, is extremely expensive for their daily care, medical costs, things like that. And obviously, I would get another bunny if Sterling or Ebony passed away. My goal is to have 2 bunnies at all times. Obviously, if one passed away, it might take a little bit to get another one, but you know what I mean? I want to have a bonded pair. That is my goal. But I'm just not looking into having a trio or a quartet or, separated bunnies. That's just not something that I am looking to have in the future at this point. I mean, someday, I think it would be pretty awesome to have a quartet, 4 bunnies, that would be pretty cool. But for the next foreseeable future, I am only planning on having a bonded pair, mainly because of financial concerns, my health, physical and mental, and space as well. I only have 1 spare bedroom, and I'm not really looking to have rabbit pens again. I would prefer to just have them in the entire room. To wrap this video up, in order to be a responsible pet owner, you need to be able to provide the following. 1, you have to be in a financial situation where you can pay for a rabbit's medical care. That includes emergency medical care, medication, and their 6-month to yearly exams. And those exams include paying for blood work. I personally think that almost all rabbits should have blood work every 12 to 6 months. 6 months if they're over the age, over a senior, only every 12 months if they're younger than that. That's very expensive in and of itself, but yeah, emergency medical care can be upwards of $500 each ER vet. The next thing you need to be able to afford is their daily care. So food, which includes hay and veggies. The next thing you need to be able to pay for is proper enrichment. That includes toys, chew toys, mats, dig toys, anything like that. I also forgot to mention for daily care, you'll need litter, things like that. The next thing you will also need is proper time. So you need to have the time and energy to be able to care for those animals. This is one of the, things that I don't have a lot of is energy. So for me to get several rabbits wouldn't be a smart idea because I don't have, the physical energy to do that. The other thing you need is proper space. So I have an entire spare bedroom. My bedroom, I think, is I don't know how big their room is, but it's pretty large. So you need to have the proper space for a rabbit. You need to have, you know, either a free range room or a very large pen. You know, some rabbits are free roam in the house, which is fine if it's bunny proofed and you don't have other pets in the home. But you should never have a rabbit out with another animal if they're not being supervised the entire time. So yeah, anyways, that's the entire video. I know it was long, I know it was rambly. I don't even know if it was interesting, but I felt like I needed to talk about it. I felt like I needed to explain to you guys. I mean, I don't need to explain to anyone why I'm not getting another rabbit, but I felt like I just kept being like, oh, I just don't want one. But like, it goes deeper than that. It goes, you know, I don't have the money for another animal. I don't have, you know, the proper time and space and all of that. And would I want another bunny? Yeah. Like, every time when my rabbits pass away or something, you get that feeling where you're like, I really want another bunny. Like, I get it all the time and it's hard to resist. And obviously, if I wasn't as, you know, strict, or I don't know what you call it, mature, I could have gone out and gotten another bunny like so easily. But I know it's not the smart decision. I know it's not the responsible decision. I know it's not the decision that would benefit my current pets, Sterling and Ebony, and that's, you know, honestly where I stand. So, you know, I don't really have to explain myself, but I did. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you got something from it, even if it was just like, you know, don't be afraid to be open about your mental health. If you need help, please speak to someone. You know, your parents, if your parents aren't someone you feel comfortable speaking to, speak to a friend or a close family member. Unfortunately, it is really hard to get mental health help in this country, probably other countries as well, but you know, wait lists are really long, appointments are very expensive, hospitalization is very expensive, and medical insurance is not free. We live in a wonderful country. Anyways, that's basically it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys very soon on a new one. Bye!